What is up, everybody? We are back. I think for those of you who don't know me, I'm Todd Bookspan, the founder of Win by Noon, and I'm joined by my co-host, none other than the CEO of Plug and Play SM, Deborah Byrd. What's up, Deborah?
Hey, hey, happy Monday.
We've missed all of you because of the fact that we have been off, both of us off traveling. We were both at Amplify last Monday, and the Monday before that, I said I was at Disneyland. We actually ended up deciding to go to Universal Studios that day. So I was riding rides with Harry Potter, The Mummy, Jurassic Park. It was very exciting.
Well, we saw some of the people at AmpCon.
Wait, hang on. I'm just changing my light. I saw you fixing your light. I'm fixing my light so it was better.
Which, can I just say, if anybody is listening to this and they were also at the Amplify event, we are officially 1 week out. So hopefully they've utilized their implementation tools from Win by Noon and implemented a few of the big ideas.
I think that's the biggest challenge, right? The biggest challenge is it's funny because I just came from a real estate mastermind called Focus on Success, and the gentleman who runs it, you can Google him. His name is Steve Chater, and Steve is a longtime close friend of Gary Keller's. And Steve owns part of a market center here it's actually in the Southeast Valley of Arizona, and Steve's a good friend of mine as well. And he always likes me to show up. He runs these weekly events, and I have not been in many, many months. And so, me, I'm the taking action guy. And he said something at the end. He said, education without application is strictly entertainment. Right. So that was pretty good. I don't know if he stole that from someone else, and, I could just steal it from him or pretend it's mine, but that's just not me. But
education without application
is strictly entertainment. And I guess I can talk about that for a second because it's kind of interesting. He says the purpose of business is to fund the perfect life, right? So I'll say that again. The purpose of business is to fund a perfect life. And so then he goes on and asks, great. So what does a perfect life look like to you? And a lot of I was born and bred in the Building Champions world, and Daniel Harkavy there teaches life planning. And so for me, to me, my perfect life is what I don't use the word perfect. So that's not my word. I like ideal. I don't think anything's perfect. It's ideal for me. So my ideal life is what I've written out in my life plan and I want to do. And Steve teaches something he calls the 5 circles. And I'm not sure if the 5 circles is his content that's unique to him, or if it is content that is someone else in his world, because he hangs out with all those thought leaders of the industry, of all of our industries. And it's, really around spiritual, around business, around financial business, personal growth, friends and relationships. I think those are the 5 circles. Since it's not my content, I don't always know, but I did take a picture of it. So I would have the picture of his 5 circles. So let's peek at that. I'll make sure I get it right, since Deborah's always so good at taking notes. The 5 circles are spiritual. Here they are. I'll see if you guys can see them. Can you see that?
Spiritual, personal, financial, community, family.
And so for me, it embodies a lot of what's in my life plan. I just get a little more granular, you could call it. I've got more categories in mind, right? So like I go as far where he says family, I've got my wife, I've got each of my kids, I've got my extended family, my brothers and my parents. So I just try to get a little more specific, right? I really believe in specificity around things. I take a deep breath. As I was talking really fast when I jumped on. It's probably because I was driving 80 down. Well, I shouldn't say that on the thing. I might have been driving 80 down the freeway to get back here on time to get us started. Look at Edgar. Edgar saying hello to all of us. It's good to see you here, Edgar. It's actually good to have so many people here after us being off. My goal would be in the future, I just have to figure this out, was that if I can't be on here, that I have some other thought leader in our world, maybe you, Deborah, or Adam, or someone lead a webinar. I realized I talk really fast until I taught a new Win by Noon user class last week with Adam, and Adam talks even faster than I talk. I was like, holy
really?
Folks. Yes, I was shocked.
Huh. You have to see some of those recordings.
Exactly. All right. So what are your thoughts before we keep going down these random rabbit trails? So you talked about Amplify and people taking action from there. What were your big takeaways?
Well, I was just going to say, I think the biggest challenge for all of us is how do you make these events where it's not just the intensity? I think this is a Simon Sinek thing, but more of consistency. So we always get really excited when we're there and we're motivated, and then you get back and it's like life hits, because you've also been out of the office, and it's making sure, okay, and I know you've coached this before, but did you plan time in your planner to then execute or go back and review your list? And I have not. So I have not won by noon as of today.
Well, but the good news is it's Monday, right? We've got time where we can actually plan and put it into our planner. And it's always interesting for me, because I was talking to the guys running, on our stuff on our loan team, Shay, as I was driving to and from this event. So I dragged him over there so he could meet people and be social and kind of see the world that I'm really blessed to be part of, like these big thought leaders and people who think a lot. And, I went straight from spring break to a 2-day real estate mastermind to 3 days in Las Vegas to, 2 crazy days here. And then even this week, I'm going to be unplugged for part of the week because I got my daughter in town and it's my anniversary. And those are things that are important to me to spend time doing. And it's written in my calendar that I'll take time off. And I do believe that you've got to do what you talked about. You have to be intentional and say, hey, this is when I'm going to spend the time to review it. And, I talked about it from Amplify Stage, right? There's the law of diminishing intent. The further you get away from it, the less likely you are to do it. And so that's why I say, great. Once we get off this call, you can certainly, Deborah, hold that in there. The accountability piece, hold it in your planner, write down when you're going to spend the time to review it. But I already know you're a student of it, even though you haven't actually scheduled the time. So you say, I bet you have time in there that you already know in your head is the time that is, non-negotiable time to work on ideas, because you take what I sit in a room and I see you take those notes and I see you turn it into magic. You put it out there as content for other people to learn from. And so I feel like that whole idea of, and we do all these little micro sprints, right? So I had Amplify, and then I sat through a momentum builder. And then now I sat through Focus on Success today. We have these micro sprints of things that we're learning, and it's really taking the time to digest it, right? Jonathan Roach says, did you read the book or did you just study the book? And I feel like it's awesome if I finish a book, but what are my takeaways? That I actually do anything actionable with what that is? And so all these things kind of, come full circle to where, kind of where we started this, right? Here we are together. We have this opportunity to share with people who are watching it, not just live, but also the people who are going to watch this in the YouTube channel later, about this whole idea of, what is the point of your business, right? Is it to fund a perfect life? What is the takeaway that you got at recent conversation? It could be, what is your takeaway from spending 30 minutes with Deb and I today? Could be from, a different webinar or call that you took, or it could be just from a conversation that you had with somebody. Because what I find is, I took over a page of notes from talking with Steve and his team. And what I always remember is that I have to slow back down then and say, okay, what am I going to do with this I learned? Because as Steve just told me, that education without application is strictly entertainment.
Well, I think that's being very focused then on, your mission and your goals that you're trying to reach, whether it's this quarter, next quarter, so that you don't say yes to too many things. Because I'm a idea junkie. Like, I can go to events or read a book, and then my brain is just like, I'm a marketer, so I'm constantly creating, and I'm thinking of multiple different clients or people that we serve and how this could help them. And, we could do this and we could add this to our services. And so it's making sure you say no to the right things so that you are saying yes to the things that are going to support those big items or those big rocks that are going to move the needle, and not get distracted by, which is hard for me, because I will consume a book, or I listen to a lot of podcasts and YouTube stuff that I'll just, I think of things, and I have to remind myself to just write it down and not let it rent too much space in my head, so I can stay focused on the things that, like the children's book that I told myself I would have done by the end of second quarter, and I'm not close to being done. So I need to make time and make sure that I actually do it when it's on my planner, not just like, I'm going to take a mental break and I'll get to that, next week. And I keep doing that, and I'll keep pushing it off. And then the time will come and I'm like, okay, well, we're almost done with first quarter, and I haven't done any of the baby steps that I needed to get done. So the book would be ready by the end of second quarter. So.
Well, I like that. I'll help hold you accountable to that. So I've already offered, I'll help in any way that I can.
The accountability helps, it really does.
It does. Mark's asking about our 1 p.m. start time. Yes. So 1 p.m., at least for the summer, is going to be our start time, 1 p.m. Pacific time. Hope that works for you all. But Monday's just such a crazy day for me. And, I'm in Arizona, so we don't have daylight savings time. And so when I looked at it, it was switching to noon. I was like, this is not really going to work. So I apologize for scaring all of you and moving it. So I'm grateful that all of you are here live to watch with us. And hopefully you all make it work. If not, it's going to be in the YouTube channel later on. I'm struggling to get comfortable in this chair. I have to admit, I feel like it's got a weird background too. Like this is my music mixer back here in case you guys want to hear.
I was going to say, are you like, you've got the Cruella vibe?
I could just pretend like this, that I'm actually talking like a real thing. All right. So I'm just totally sorry. Easily distracted, guys. Oh, look, there's a bird.
Well, I'm curious of all the people who are on right now, if any of you were at the AmpCon. I'm not sure if any of y'all were there, but if you were, drop a note in the comments. My favorite speaker was the Gracie guy with his whole story. Wasn't he the founder of UFC? But he's talked about
UFC. Yeah. All right. So let's just talk about that since you brought it up. Let's go down that rabbit trail. So his name's Rory and Gracie, and Amplify is really about telling your story, right? It's the whole idea of how can you better articulate, really how do you better connect, right? And you can connect with people when we're here. You can connect with a client on the phone. You connect with a family member, and it really always has to start with, he's got his formula, right, Deb? So give us the formula, the Amplify formula.
So not including social, but the sequence of communication is frame, which means most people always start with the now. So you have to remember framing goes back to the past. So you start with frame, then you have message, that's the meat of the sandwich, and then the end is the tie down.
Right, which is kind of why it matters to you. And so Rory and Gracie's the founder of UFC. He grows up in Brazil, and he was on stage for, I want to say, close to an hour. And he did his frame. His frame took 50 minutes of the hour, where he talked about growing up in Brazil. He talked about coming to America. He talked about being a housekeeper. He talked about, all the things that made him super unique. And he was a very good storyteller. And he basically, their family basically created Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And there's this thing called the Gracie Challenge, which I refuse to go to YouTube to watch. But apparently, if you think you're a badass, you would just go over to the Gracie's house, whatever time of day it was, knock, knock, knock on the door, and then you would challenge them to a fight, and they would fight you. And guess what? They would win. It was a very large family. And then he goes and he sells UFC and made a lot of money selling UFC. And you were thinking he's going to tell a story and there's going to be some point to, this is why I'm telling you the story about jiu-jitsu and the UFC from a business perspective. And there were some takeaways there from a persistence perspective. I mean, the fact that he was very good at not reacting to things and putting a positive frame on things. When he moved to America, he had a ticket, as the old days, right? He had an actual physical plane ticket, and his money, he stayed at the YMCA, and he was worried someone was going to steal his money. So he gave it to the receptionist at the YMCA, his plane ticket and his money, so that she could store it for safekeeping, and she stole it. So he had to go out and get a job because he had no money, and he had to save up enough money for a return ticket. So his family thought he was going to come back in a month, and he had to call him. And instead of saying, gosh, I had my plane ticket stolen, I'm stuck here for 6 months, he called his family. Back then, probably, you had to put a bunch of quarters in a payphone, or maybe even dimes, I'm guessing at that point. In case any of you guys don't know what that is, that's the smaller coin. It's worth 10 cents that you saw before COVID hit. And he called his family and said, hey, I'm having so much fun here, I decided I'm going to stay for 6 months. And so just a really interesting guy, but it took this 45 to 50 minutes really to tell you about the fact that he felt his family was so strong and so good was because they were on this special diet, and how the special diet that they were on is really what helped them live this long life. And so he did this whole big buildup then to say, well, yeah, really, we were successful because of the way that we ate, because how my uncle Carlos cooked food. And then, oh, by the way, I was so passionate about it, I wrote a book. And so that's really all he was selling us his book. Why this matters to you is if you want to be healthy and successful like me, you should be on the Gracie diet. Oh, and you can come buy a book out here. And I never looked at see how much the book cost. Did you get a picture with them?
I didn't either.
But I got a picture with them, and I didn't even look because, again, this just tells you that when value is there, price doesn't matter. I got to imagine if I bought the book on Amazon, the Gracie Diet, if someone wants to look it up, they can, but you should all be paying attention. But I got to imagine it's a $10 paperback on Amazon, but I paid $25, but I got an autographed copy of my picture with Rory and Gracie, the head of the UFC. And so it's just a really interesting thought of how long are you taking to ask the right questions, tell the right story, the backstory to your clients before you're just going in there to sell, right? All right, great. Name, social security number. Hey, what price range are you shopping in? Let me get you into an MLS search, whatever it is that seat you're sitting on. Are you actually taking the time to connect with people to help them understand the passion behind what they're doing? So those were my big takeaways. How about you, Deborah?
I mean, that's why I immediately thought of the CMA a day and the TCA a day challenges. I really think right now is the best time. And so usually it's fourth quarter when it's easy to reach out to your database and reconnect because you have the holidays going on. But, right now with the shortage with just inventory and inflation, it's like, just be a human being that cares and pick up the phone and call your database and just ask, how's it going? Like, how are you doing? And I think we take for granted that, there's a lot of people out there who are on fixed income. So their income's not going up, but their expenses have increased, groceries, utilities, gas, and we don't see our paper statements anymore. So I don't even know if we're as aware of those subscriptions that we pay for. And, those are increasing, that it's like, where could this head if we aren't the guide and we're not that world-class guide where it doesn't matter if you're a real estate agent or the mortgage lender. It's just be a human that cares about the people who have shown that they love you, which they show they love you when they do business with you. So how are you being intentional of reaching back out? Maybe it's even hosting, one-to-many webinar that maybe you find a trend in these next 30 days when you're intentionally trying to do either a TCA or CMA a day, that maybe you find a trend that it's, child psychology or something with, kids and nutrition. There could be a theme that you hear from parents or the families you serve that are the most frequent challenges that are going on in the household. Again, it may not always be financial, but then how do you be the solutionist and say, okay, if these are the trends of my database, these are their current felt pains, how could I help them? And that's what I like about even doing these webinars. It's like, you could host your own show each week and say, this Monday, we're going to interview, not you and I, but the people who are on this call. Maybe you're going to interview a child psychologist and you're just going to talk through, just like we do here, very informally, just Q&A, let people add in with the chat, but you're solving the pain point that would be valuable to those who need the help right now. And so pick up the phone and reach people when they need it most right now. But you have to ask. That's the other thing that was a takeaway was, what we think is value, is it really value or is it just perceived value? And how do you know unless you ask? Because some people did I find it as valuable as maybe as Todd did when we were there? Probably not, because a lot of it was about marketing or social media. So it wasn't just as much new stuff for me personally. And I'm probably addicted to learning and I like learning new things, that you have to be careful on who you ask certain questions so that you truly know what value is. And I gave that example. I don't know if you saw it, Todd, with the water bottle. I know you and I had talked about it when we were in the casino, where it's like, what is really value? Because that one water bottle is like 25 cents at Costco, $1.50 at, vending machine at a grocery store. But in my hotel, ironically, it was cheaper. That same bottle of water would be $5. But when it's in the lobby in the casino area, when you really need water, whether you're dehydrated from drinking too much or inhaling smoke or whatever, it was $10 a bottle for the same, and people would buy it because at that time, and that's part of framing and context and how people make decisions. It's interesting to me that sometimes we lead with what we think is value, but we don't take the time to stop and ask, nor do we frame it, which is a big part of Amplify, is knowing how to frame things.
It's funny because you two things, total rabbit trails, but I'm going to say them because I just wrote down on my planner for my phone call tomorrow. But I ran into two realtors there who are business partners. It's one's birthday, so I went over to say happy birthday. And that's why I was almost late to be on this call. And they just said how they just thanked me because they said the number one thing that they're finding is helping their business right now is doing the CMA a day. And so now I have a follow-up to find out what exactly that means. So I'm not quite sure. Are they truly doing one a day? Are they just committed to a certain number a week? But I had given them the CMA a day, the big pull-out calendar thing, a while back, and encouraged that. And it was interesting because one of the things at this webinar at this meeting that Steve said, he said, "Hey, congratulations on having the best last year being the best year of your career. Sales prices were up 30%. So was it kind of more or less kind of saying, hey, was it really you? Or did you just happen to be benefit from this 30% increase?" And the woman who spoke leads a fairly large team. And she said, "Gosh, this year's been really hard for us, right? We're not doing as well as we wanted to do." And so I love a meeting when someone gets up there and talks transparently about the struggles they're having. And so think about that, right? Whether you're sitting in the realtor seat or you're sitting in the loan officer seat watching this, who do you know, might be you by looking in the mirror, that can benefit from some of these ideas that Deborah's talking about? It just tells me, Deborah, we probably we'll commit to next Monday. Well, I'll commit to it. Hopefully you can be here too, unless you have a better idea. But let's bring back CMA a day, TCA a day challenge for Q2. Let's kick it off next week. And so those of you who want to kind of be part of that, or maybe if any of you have experience, you did a good job of doing CMAs or TCA days sometime, whether it was this quarter or some quarter last year, let us know. We would love to bring you in and be part of the call. Quick commercial too, while I'm thinking about it, because I see a lot of people here who are in my operating system group training, group coaching program. So I am launching another one of those the first week of April. I can't believe it's April already. So I'm going to throw that in here. So if anyone is interested in checking it out, check it out. Operating-system.com. Dave Savage thought it was really funny because Tristan Sherrill was there and he told Dave that one of his team members is in it and thinks it's amazing. But I didn't hear that part. Dave said, "Oh yeah, his team member's in there and they're really disappointed in it." And I'm like, "What?" And I was like, I felt really bad. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, and he's like, no, he's pulling your leg. Like, she loves it. It's amazing. She says it's awesome." And so
can I just throw a little plug in there that for anybody on this call who's in the current Win by Noon operating system, I would love if you'll email me so we can remove Todd so he doesn't see it. But if you'll email, and I'll drop it in the comments, just a little blurb or testimonial, or just even if you want to send a video message explaining what these 90 days have done for you or kind of your biggest takeaway, I would love to use that for some of social. If that's okay with you, Todd.
That's awesome. I'm grateful in advance for all of you.
Yeah, I'm going to put my email in the comments now. I would really say video testimonials would be preferred. So if I have some brave souls out there, and if you don't mind, Todd, you're next, because y'all meet tomorrow, right?
We meet tomorrow at noon.
Okay.
Pacific. I should throw that out there. I always got to throw the right time in there. So, all right, enough about me. Let's, this is not where that's how we're supposed to talk about things. All right. So, I hate saying, see, you're not supposed to say, when you're doing that. I would say this was kind of just an interesting side point, right? So Renee, when he teaches Amplify, he talks about, you don't want to use so and all these filler words. And I told Deborah this, I shouldn't say it but Renee's not on here, but Renee got really nervous when he was introducing Rory and Gracie. And he actually said, a few times. And I was like, wow, like I'm not used to that, but it all comes down to that whole idea of are you prepared for it, right? Someone said the quote there that we've heard before, it's you always feel prepared until someone punches you in the face, right? The Mike Tyson quote. And I think that that's really the key. And so that's why I'm attempting to slow back down. See, this is just coaching to myself with all of you here.
See, when you do this is very similar to Brad Lee. And to me, it's when you're authentic and you're going through that metacognition process. It's amazing. It makes us connect with you. It shows the human side of you. And it's like, gosh, the coach Todd Bookspan also struggles with saying and so I think there's a happy mix between being super polished and, how he says your body language. But then you see Brad who turns the chair around and he's just who he is. He's a little rough around the edges. He's dropped a lot of curse words, but he wasn't kind of in his own headspace contemplating like, oh gosh, what am I saying? And, because it's that whole approval thing. So I think there's a good, fine line where you being just as vulnerable and talking about how you struggle with saying, like it makes me connect with you more.
Well, when I first started doing video, my coach, Steve Scanlon, said, people like your videos because you're not very good. And then I repeated that out in front of the group once. And he said, no, what I meant was that you're not polished. It's not like you're standing there all prim and proper and you're perfect. Because when I made a mistake, I just kept going, right? Not the first time, probably not the first 20 times. Re-record. And you're finally like, that's just good enough. I got to put it out there. And I'm very comfortable in my skin. However, I do want to make sure, I feel that when I'm talking so fast, I want to make sure that I slow down and take a breath, and that I'm a little more articulate in what I say. So I do believe that it's an opportunity for, I'm super transparent. That I just don't hide much. I just feel like, life is too short for that. And it's, I would say the good thing, like when I go to a room like I was at today, I feel a little weird in there because, there's probably 30 realtors in the room, and my team likes it when I show up for the reason that I don't like to show up because I get embarrassed by it. Because Steve, again, he's written one of the Keller Williams like top series of books. He travels all over and gets paid to speak. And then he makes this comment about vision and goals and planning the steps to get there. And he's like, I feel embarrassed even talking about this when I've got the master of it, Todd, here from Win by Noon in front of the whole group. And, I got this new team member, and he's like, oh, well, gosh, maybe Todd's a bigger deal than I thought. And all these things. And I'm just laughing. I'm like, yeah, no, keep going, Steve. But I'm like, I seem a lot smarter in that room because I didn't open my mouth. That's, I guess, the long and short of my story.
It reminds me of this.
That was the other side. Well, it was a little awkward. It's kind of awkward sitting off to the side, but I'm glad we stood because we were going to argue over who's the side.
That's perfect. I don't have any pictures of me up on the stage, so I'll have to get that from you.
Yeah, well, you've got one that's being posted this week. Not that one, but a different one. But you talked about feeling a little bit awkward being on stage because here were two Todds on the stage, and then you're so witty where you said, yeah, I didn't want it to be awkward where one of us would have to fight over who was going to sit on the chair like Brad. It was funny because he had turned it around. So this was a good, but as soon as you got into your speech, I do believe there is an art to communication and the whole sequence thing like Renee teaches. I mean, that is, it's opened your brain a bit when you are taught that, our hearts, I guess, listen in sequence. So instead of just rambling like I do often, once you started talking about kind of your story and, you always do such a good job buttoning up how to be intentional, and you took little pieces of what every speaker had talked about, but then you went into your cycling and your own story and your movements and your eye contact, and you were good on your speed. Like it was very confident, very poised, but still felt, because you had that wit and charm in there, that it was still relatable and people could connect with you. So I just wanted to clarify that when I say, still be you and authentic, and I do believe in the science of how you speak and communicate is important, and there's an order to that. And once you learn it, it's pretty powerful.
Well, I'll throw a couple things out there that I think are important that you said. And I learned there's a guy named Joel Weldon, and Joel is the only living speaker who's won the top award from every speaker bureau. And Joel is a little older. He's like in his 80s and maybe late 70s, early 80s. I don't want to date him, but he was my Toastmasters group leader. So I would get to do Toastmasters with him. And then he also is the speech person for the Genius Network, the entrepreneur group that I was in. And he's really brilliant. And he taught me that you always tie something into the speaker before you, when you get on stage, in order to show the audience that you were paying attention and to kind of pay homage to them. And I bring it up to all of you because you may go speak in front of a room where you're the second realtor to talk, or you're a loan officer who talks after a different loan officer, or a realtor introduces you to speak. And anytime you can tie in something that they said, you look a lot smarter than you are. And so for me to tie those people in, that was definitely intentional. Plus I was up there speaking, and the person that I was speaking alongside of literally stole everything I was going to say. Well, not stole, that's what he was going to teach. We're of like mind. So he said, here's your action plan. And it was pretty much the same action plan that I was going to give. So on the fly, I had to sort of switch gears and say something different. And I haven't watched it. I'm still petrified a little bit to watch it. I do feel like I was in the zone because I don't remember everything that I said. And so to hear that came out semi-articulate is good. All I remember is making a joke about Win by Noon and no one laughing. So you're always super hypersensitive to what you say. And then you're like, oh, that didn't work very well because I'm just sarcastic. I'm not very funny. And so really the the ongoing piece is if you can learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? It's one of the things when I start out the group coaching, every time I review certain slides, and it always says get uncomfortable being uncomfortable, because I think you have to be. And, I've grown a lot because I've done 500 webinars now on Zoom with Mortgage Coach, with you, with Dave. And it makes it a lot easier because I'm just going through the reps, right? It's just doing it over and over again. And so I think that that's where you have to, get comfortable with all the things that Deborah teaches and say, gosh, I'm just going to jump in and do it. And then also be okay with not being as good as you want, but still putting it out there, and be okay with, yeah, I might have to re-record it, but I would encourage you not to, and be okay with just saying, gosh, I'm going to work on it and be better the next time, right? The better that you can be. Because I don't have any, some of these people have these really obviously crazy setups. I mean, this is just my laptop. It's sitting here on a desk, and I didn't even put up my fake background because I got this beautiful plastic shell here that's next to me. And, I can hear I'm into this real estate office. So they're having a big rev share meeting across the way, and they're very excited apparently about how much money they're making. So it's, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of I can't remember who the Navy SEAL was, who said, be fascinated with the fear. And not that I recommend tying up kids.
Andrew Paul.
Yeah. That would be getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. But another quote that it reminds me of us, kicking off the CMA a day and TCA a day challenge next week is when he said, how you do things in practice is how you do things in power. So it's, are you practicing? Are you doing those daily reps so that you do get great at them? And I think I was thinking about this with my son, who was playing in a baseball tournament this weekend, where it's so easy to tell our kids this, not to get in their own way, and that this is why you practice, and don't worry, just because you struck out, get back up there next time. It's like, we're so good at telling kids this, just not ourselves. We don't give ourselves enough grace and, opportunities to keep practicing and having that hope and faith that you're just going to get better and better as you keep doing. Yet we tell our kids that all the time. I literally had that outer body experience as I'm telling my son. And if my daughter would have been there, she would have been coaching me, because she's heard me say this now, and she's become like this mini coach in my ear. But sometimes we just need someone else's belief in us to re-believe in ourselves. And so that would be the only other thing that I would like, to address on this call is, we're about to finish Q1 and we're starting second quarter. So who can you be the light? And that's kind of an amplified theme, is the whole lighthouse. How are you? There's some dark moments for whether it's families or your business or some business partners, but how are you showing up every day so that energy is transferred, no matter when there's, darkness? There's always, even when there's dark, it's the law of opposites. There's something you can be grateful for and choose to focus on. Maybe it's being more intentional of catching your teammates doing things right. Sometimes we can get so focused on what we do wrong or what should have been done better, but are you being as intentional of, it could be your spouse, and maybe they finally put the toilet seat down, instead of nagging on, reminding them, it's like, okay, reward them or praise them for doing it right. So that would
I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I'm really good at putting the toilet seat down, because I have, a wife and 3 daughters. But I think that's the whole, you bring up a perfect point, is that we all forget how we were when we were kids, and we were more resilient when we were kids. And I think when you put on a lens, whether you're a parent or not, when you put on that lens of how are you coaching your kids is probably how you need to coach yourself, then I think that's a great opportunity for everyone to learn. So we're gonna run here for a few more minutes. Does anyone have any questions for Deborah or I while you've got us here live? Very excited to come in next week, laser focus on the TCA and CMA a day challenge. Deborah wanted me to talk about my book I was reading, so I'm listening to
Yes.
I'm listening to Lifespan by Tony Robbins. So Tony Robbins, he's always intrigued me. I met him once. His hand was bigger than my head. I got to find that picture. It's astounding.
Because he has a tumor on his pituitary gland. Did you know that?
He does. And he talks about that in the book. So I listened to his books on finance, which are great books on finance. And, because he's Tony Robbins, he's got the calling card where he can call the best of the best. So he reached out to the best in the financial world and did all of his books on money. And they're really good books. But they're really long books, because he interviews all these people and gets all of their philosophy, but, boiled it down to his principles. And so lifespan is the same thing. I actually saw that he had posted a few years ago about being at the Vatican for some crazy health conference. And basically this book is kind of all the people that he's met and connected with. And he's got a chapter, I'm on chapter maybe 10. It's like, the book is like this thick. I mean, it's really thick. I'm going to order it because I want the book as a reference guide for what I'm listening to, because I listen to it really fast. I think that's why I talk so fast. I listen to Tony at 2.5 speed, and then he switches over to a narrator like 3 chapters in. And I listen to the narrator on 3 times the speed, because he's not as excitable as Tony and doesn't talk as fast. But the bottom line is, if you're interested in the cutting edge of health, and if you're interested in hearing about these treatments that actually either exist today, maybe not in the US, or are about to be introduced, it's a really cool book. All right, Michelle, you can hear that fast. You're that smart. And so ultimately it is, all right, we got a great question there. I'll let you read it, Deb, and then you can start answering. I'll answer with you so I can finish my Tony Robbins story before I get distracted by the chat comment. But the bottom line is this: if you're interested in health, it's super cool. You know me, I'm a health nerd, and my buddy Kevin Kaufman, who Dave and I have interviewed talking about health, that's whose office I'm sitting in. And I'm fascinated by the book because, I've got family members with health challenges and I want to live a long life. And the fact that there are these crazy discoveries that are already going on now is just, it's mind blowing. It's truly a mind blowing book. I laughed. This might be my last story, and then I'll let you answer that, Deb. So my daughter's home. My wife's like, let's get her the good coffee. So, cause I'm cheap, I got a Keurig, from out of my Airstream. That's like this cheapest Keurig you can buy. It's terrible coffee because my really expensive coffee maker is broken. It's sitting on the garage floor in a box to be shipped off. And so I ordered on the app right at 7:00 when the coffee shop opens. And I'm listening to my book while I'm driving over, and I get there and it's locked. And I'm like, all right, it's run by college kids. It's right near ASU. And I'm sitting there, there's on their patio furniture that has no pads on it. So just kind of on the rub, like the springy things that where the cushions go. And finally, about 10 minutes afterwards, this one woman, a woman I meet, someone the age of my kids, says, hey, I'm really sorry. The person with the keys isn't here yet. And so I said, no worries, I'm just listening to my book. And so finally, after 30 minutes, I could see that she was in there running around, and I was kind of thinking she would just make my coffee because I'd ordered it at 7:00 and it was now 7:30. And then finally about 7:35, the guy with the motorcycle who drove up with the keys and said, I'm really sorry, the person who was supposed to open didn't. He says, do you want a refund or do you want us to make your coffee? And I'm like, okay, again, you can't get hijacked. I'm like, hey, that would be awesome if I could get my coffee. My wife said she was shocked I didn't say both. I want a refund and I want my coffee. But ultimately, I was like, that's a weird question. I've been waiting now for 40 minutes almost. So it took me 45 minutes to get my coffee, but I got to listen to more of my book. So the moral of my story was my family was still home sleeping. I got to listen to the book. And that's why I'm so excited.
Fun fact, I've never had coffee. I'm sure that's not surprising to you, Todd.
I did not. It is surprising because you have so much energy. I did not have coffee until I was in my 20s, when this crazy guy named Clyde with a lot of tattoos, before tattoos were cool, that I hired to work in my bike shop, made me coffee with his fancy espresso machine. And I still didn't drink a lot of coffee, and I don't drink caffeine. So mine was decaf, just in case you guys wonder. I talk so fast, but there's no caffeine in there.
Mine is my Spark. That's what I drink. When you see that little red drink, it's Spark. But okay, so the question was, Deb and Todd, I need some help around what to say if I'm reaching out to a list of homeowners for the purpose of a potential cash out refinance. How can I incorporate TCA or a home value report?
All right, so that's a good question. Why don't you answer it first, and I'll give my 2 cents after.
Well, so my first thought is I would go to what you said, potential cash out refinance. So what would be the motives, or what would be the why behind when it's a good idea for people to do a cash out refinance, which there would be a couple of different reasons. And then I would do a couple different things. I would probably do a TCA, that's storytelling, where you have shown kind of like a case study of how a cash out refinance has solved one of those problems. So maybe it's to consolidate higher interest debt. You could have a different case study that would show ways to like even increasing your rate, as crazy as it may sound, which that would be a great hook, by the way. Just here's how taking a higher interest rate just increased my net worth by, $3 million over 30 years. So those would be, I would get really good at storytelling, and you could send this for a one-to-many and do a, Friday email to your entire database who could have value in listening, that even if they're not in the market to do a cash out refinance, it could be something as simple with a call to action saying, hey, it's free if you'd like for us to do a total cost analysis for your unique situation as well. We can do that. Just, respond to this email with your current mortgage statement. That way you can get, some figures off of it. We'd be happy to help, or you could even share this with friends, family members, in case, someone you love or care about could also benefit from this strategy of a cash out refinance with these multiple, X, Y, and Z solutions that it could solve for you.
No, I think that's great. I think it always comes back, me, I'm all about annual mortgage reviews. And when I see TCA and I see home value report, I think of HomeBot, right? But it doesn't have to be HomeBot. You can help someone out with a CMA, right? That's their home value. Without having done that, you can reach out to their real estate agent. And I think, to me, whatever you want to call it, annual mortgage review, someone at Amplify or at Momentum Builder said that's not the word they used. Maybe it was, I'm not sure who it was, but they were talking about a financial checkup, right? And so when you think about a financial checkup, I think that's how I would be prefacing the initial part of the call with the client. Hey, let's do a quick financial checkup. And then, if you've done their previous loan, you know what their interest rate was. And if it's 2 3/4, and we know that that's not a real rate today, then the question that you're going to ask them to see if a cash out refinance is in the cards is, tell me about your debt outside of your mortgage, right? So it's just a pretty simple question, but it catches people off guard because they're like, what do you mean? And then you say, great, tell me about credit cards, student loans, auto loans. Really just want to know about the debt outside of your mortgage, because we know if they have debt that it probably makes sense to a refinance, even if they have that low loan. And the problem is, we know it, that people are emotionally attached to that low rate, but they're missing the fact that over here, they've got this really high total cost of their debt. And you just have to use a tool like the TCA to be able to show them that. And then then you can bring in the value of their home, but you don't even need to have HomeBot or a CMA to say, well, how's your home value doing? Has it gone up in the past year? Because the answer is yes. But ultimately, it's, to me, the financial checkup is, if they don't have that debt, they could be doing anything right. And that's awesome. That's still a client that by you making that call, you are going to get that next referral they have of somebody who's thinking about buying, selling, refinancing, or investing in real estate. And so that's just a matter of, by having the conversation, hey, I just want to make sure you're good. And then if you truly are the captain of your wealth team, then you can direct it to the other questions where you have to determine if you're comfortable having them. Awesome. Hey, do you have a financial advisor? Do you feel like your CPA is giving you good advice? You really don't even ask them that way. You say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your CPA? At a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your financial advisor? I don't have one. And again, if someone only has $50, then they might not want or need a financial advisor. But if they're saving their money, there are financial advisors who would actually like someone who's willing to save $50. A brand new advisor is looking to build their database. And so that's where you'll go out and make those phone calls. So left field, went off to a little bit of a tangent, but then you can ask all those other questions about, the things that we know that the financially well-off do. They've got great insurance agents. They've got great financial advisors, CPAs, trust, all those things that I think are really important.
The other thing I was thinking when you were talking is, I don't know if you use Encompass or not, but there's a way that you can add a column in your pipeline view of debt to income ratio. And maybe you start with those who you can have maybe their FICO score, debt to income ratio, maybe even loan type. And just be intentional of, okay, let's look at people who are at max DTI. And I don't even know if there's a way you could review credit reports to see who had what kind of debt. Obviously, if they were max DTI, it could be that they had a lot of credit card debt or, whatever their loans were. So I would even start there and be intentional. And then if you were going to send one-on-one emails, it's like, hey, when we did a loan together, this is what your credit was then. And maybe they've had their credit score increase, so there could be multiple different ways based off how granular you are with your data of being super intentional so that it feels specific to them. I do caution people on sending, when you're doing the one-to-many, it's important to still make people feel significant, like they're not just in a conveyor belt and they want something that is true to them. So, if you had a screenshot of this was where you were, this is your credit or your mortgage strategy that I'm assuming you're in mortgage because he said TCA, right? Yes. Oh, you don't use Encompass. I've never used that. Calyx.
They're all the same. They all do the same thing. They all think they're better than one another.
Yeah. But that's just being intentional with the data that you have. And a call that we did recently on Mortgage Pitch was with Ryan Grant. I don't know if you remember that one, Todd, where he talked about at the end of the annual asset review, there's going to be three things. You're either going to be filling your pipeline of a potential purchase in the future. So, depending on how you segment your database, maybe who purchased that were first-time home buyers that are probably going to purchase again. You're just checking in. A possible transaction right now, so maybe a rate term refi, getting out of an FHA loan to conventional or a cash out. And then number three, it's asking for the referral. So anytime you're calling your database or intentionally trying to do a TCA a day or CMA a day, those three things could be possible.
Well, I love that. I think you're spot on. So I would say there's no time like today to start working on your database, right? The best time to plant an elm tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. And I think that if you're a student of the market, the number one thing that I know is that rates are going to go up this year and that they're going to come down in the next year or two. That's what Dan Rawich says. That's what Barry Habib says. That's what all the experts say. And there's a huge difference between the people who take action on that and the people who just say, oh, that's interesting, and then will be reacting when rates actually drop. And so I would be doing what Deborah said. I'd be going back through. I mean, unless you're really busy, right, which some people aren't, I'd be going back through all the loans that I closed last year and the year before, and I would be looking at that, do just what she said, be looking at what was their debt ratio, look at what their other debt was. I mean, you should still have access to the original credit report. And then when you call to do your annual, whatever review you want to call it, you can ask those questions. And then don't be afraid that what Deborah said was number 3 on Ryan's list is just to ask for a referral. Your whole goal is to keep reminding those people, because when rates drop again, they still have 2.75. Rates may only get to 3. You might not have that opportunity with them, but their friends are going to say, hey, rates have dropped. They're going to say, gosh, you know what? You should be calling my friend Edgar, because Edgar was awesome. He keeps checking in on me, even though I don't have the option to refinance. So as long as you're calling with the right intentions to help them, to make sure you're helping them grow wealth through home ownership, whether you're on the real estate side or the mortgage side, I think that is your opportunity. And I think that there's just different people. I can remember being at Mastermind in Las Vegas, and I interviewed Josh Metal after Barry Habib had spoke. And I said, I wasn't there. And he's like, oh my gosh, I got to tell you about it. I'm like, great, let's turn on the camera. And I talked to him. He just said, hey, Barry says that we're going to see low rates, like the lowest rates we've ever seen in the next year. And he just said, what I'm going to do is go back and fine tune my database. So when rates drop, I'm ready for it. And Josh is someone who takes action. And so here we are again, Barry Habib is saying the exact same thing again now, that rates are going to drop again. And we're also stuck with, oh, rates are higher than they were before, but we've been helping people go through the higher 3s, and now we're in the 4s. And so those are your opportunities for refinance next time. And so my question for you is, your database going to be ready? So that would be my encouragement, probably the way that we tie a bow on this, and then we can lead into the database piece when we're doing TCA and CMA a day next week. What do you think, Deborah?
Yeah, I think that's great.
All right. Anything else you want to add before I let everyone go off and get to work?
Don't forget, tomorrow is TCA Tuesday. So I want to see y'all. And I see some of my clients on this list. So I'm going to be looking for y'all's live feeds of doing your TCA a day, where again, you're just following that sequence of storytelling. And again, your whole motive of why you go live is not just for the algorithms. It's because something that you're sharing is going to be valuable for even just one person listening, where perfect example is the single mom refinance that Alex Cook did. And if you haven't seen that, then go to the Mortgage Coach resources. It'll be in there as an example, but tie the emotional story first as your intro. What was the client's problem? What were they looking for? The meat of it is how the TCA, or how you solved that problem for them. And then you end with the tie down, which the famous one is, I share this with you all because you may have a sister or a daughter or an aunt who may also be a single mom and looking for some creative options right now while times are tough. And so perhaps if you shared this with her, we could do the same for her, So reminder for all of you to take what you learn and go serve more people, because that's what the world needs, is more truth and education. So go learn so you can serve.
Look at that. Deborah Byrd, always not just telling us a message, but wearing the message as well. As always, I'm grateful for you for sitting here and watching this, whether you watch it live or on video. Give us a like, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. And Deborah Byrd, you, as always, my friend, I appreciate you being here more than you know and making this a great call.
Thank you. Appreciate all of you.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week.